The Florida Podcast Network, the voice of Florida.
On TECHxploration, your trusted tour guides, Craig and David, will explore every corner of Florida for the latest tech and innovations emerging within our communities as an inside look ahead at Florida's future.
Hey there, this is our fourth episode of TECHxploration on the Florida Podcast Network. Here we're discovering all things tech and innovation thriving under the Florida sun. I'm Craig, one of your hosts.
And I'm David, and we're from Clarity Creative Group, an Orlando-based digital marketing agency. Let's go.
On today's episode, we'll get started with some tech news that we think you should know about.
Then Jason Hill of Owwll tells us all about his new app for anyone seeking instant one-on-one advice from an industry expert.
And finally, we'll wrap it up with this week's tech tip. Big news in technology coming our way, David. It might be that, at least from the perspective of some big business, that we might have beat COVID. I don't know. We're not doctors, but some huge tech giants are reopening their offices. So what does this mean for us? Does this mean hybrid is dead? Like what happens here, David?
You know what? Isn't that the $1 million question right now? And probably millions of dollars in office space rent that's being paid and not used. But we're, kind of hearing that there's some dates finally kind of being put down for some of the big tech giants, your Apples, your Microsofts, your Twitters, about setting up back to having in office time again. And maybe the hybrid work plans might not last. We're not sure, but they're really starting to kind of put some solid dates, right? In April and March, here of 2022. And they're thinking it's time.
Twitter says they're coming back literally March 15th, right? So by the time people listen to this, it probably already happened, but they're not forcing people to come back in. Whereas Google, which is planning to reopen in the first week of April, they're saying they're really looking for people to spend at least 3 days a week in office.
It's still, I guess, hybrid at this point.
Oh,
right?
Definitely. Employees got used to it to a degree, right? We, as small business owners, we even experienced that where we had to go hybrid as a result. And as we're transitioning some individuals back in, what do you think could be the fallout maybe? Are there going to be some people that leave certain businesses for more flexible schedules and opportunities? What do you think?
I do. I definitely think that, being that it's been, almost, 2 years or maybe even more than 2 years for some going through this, kind of remote lifestyle, I think some of them are going to feel that's a commitment that they want to make. I think there's going to be a percent that are ready to go back in, right? Or are excited and maybe have already gone back in. But I do think that at some point, people are going to probably start choosing employers based on availability and based on things. Now, I do wonder, companies like Google and Apple and Twitter, which, need I would say a very specialized workforce, right? Is there at some point where maybe they realize that they have to cast that wide net again to find, the talent that they need that they could kind of gotten away with, right? When they maybe were able to do a little bit more on the hybrid side or a little bit more on the remote side. Is this going to kind of change things, right? That they kind of now are forcing, that you got to be maybe local, to some of the offices again.
Oh, absolutely. And then, specifically Apple rolling out by the end of May, they have their pilot program for full hybrid. Like that's just what they're going to be offering. But 3 of those days of the week, there would have to be some office. Now, and again, Apple has multiple offices, but just like you said, that really kind of, again, refocuses the job pool, the individuals that could be working there. Because again, if they are to follow that hybrid pilot, they're going to have to be close to an office, which in tech, in development, and again, you've got so much experience here, you don't have to be in any one place if you can have great ways to collaborate. So I think that this is that great mix of how old business methods and new business methods are coming together. And do you think that hybrid will be here to stay in some capacity for literally for the rest of our careers? What do you think?
You know what? I definitely think that this is going to be kind of more of a normal and definitely more of an offering that could be, available. But the other side of like the whole online versus offline versus hybrid versus, remote or whatever, is that I wonder though, if you were to really look at some of the innovation teams of Google and Apple, right, whose job it is to kind of collaborate on maybe new ideas and things like that, if where they feel their abilities to work together on has done, with mostly the remote or maybe having, some people, working hybrid, if anything was stunted during that time, if they're like, no, the hybrid works, or we got to go all back in because we're still not getting maybe the innovation that they're looking for. It's just, kind of a thought.
No, it'll be really interesting to see how, again, starting with the tech giants, how their output is affected. And we won't see that till the end of the year next year, but the trickle down effect to mid-sized businesses all the way down to small businesses. Very intriguing to see the future of hybrid work. We're super excited to have Jason Hill, CEO and president of Client Focus Advisors, but more importantly, the founder of an app, Owwll. So you guys already know myself, Craig, and my partner in crime, David, but we have to let you know who is Jason Hill. So Jason, say hello. Tell us who you are.
Thanks for the introduction, Craig and David. I'm excited to be part of this podcast episode today. So I'll start with my background. I'm in the financial service industry. I run Client Focus Advisors. It was started in New York City. And after 10 years of doing it in Manhattan, I decided to shift down to South Florida 4.5 years ago and continuously expand our team. We have a team of 6 advisors and approximately 5 staff that support it. And we created the Tank Podcast. So I'm a podcast host myself. We do it in person. We've interviewed 180 different entrepreneurs from South Florida, finding the do's and don'ts of running a successful business. And it's been an interesting journey from moving from New York to South Florida and getting, the opportunity to pick the brains of all these amazing entrepreneurs we've had on our show. We also partner with the FAU College of Business. They're our co-host of that podcast. And recently I started an app called Owwll. Right now it's in beta and we're set to launch in the App Store in January. It's going to get really interesting with all the marketing that we have planned and building a brand ambassador network. And I'm happy to share kind of why we started Owwll App, where it came from during this podcast and where we believe it's going to head in the future. It was started, of course, with the pandemic. That's where the idea came from. COVID-19 has really changed a lot of lives and how often people, will be, resigning from the corporate lifestyles and working from home. And we wanted to give people another revenue stream while they work from home. So kick things off. I'll let you guys ask the questions, but that's a little bit of a background about myself to start things off.
No, I love it. And we're New York boys ourselves. Myself from Staten Island area. David, I never get it right. Where the heck was your family from?
Just upstate White Plains. So we were train ride away from the city.
3 New York boys talking tech in Florida. We've been here 25 years. I know you've only been here 4, but you came in, you already had, again, the financial business put together, but Tank Podcast, does your work there have anything to do with how you, because I know we're going to get deeper into Owwll, but I wanted to understand 180 episodes, a lot of people that you talk to, a lot of businesses. Is that kind of the origin of that? Of how it got to Owwll and you wanting to help people connect, learn, grow? Give me a little context into if they kind of overlap in any way.
Yeah, that's exactly why Owwll was created, actually, because as a podcast host, you get to ask, experts all different types of questions of how they started their business, how they scaled their business, what mistakes they made along the way. And of course, you get so much knowledge getting to ask those questions where often we're listening to books while driving in our cars or on a subway in New York City, and we're always listening, right? We're not doing it as much as we want sometimes. And podcasting allows you to kind of dive deeper, and really understand the concepts that you're not certain about. So what happened is, having an hour episode once a week for the last 3.5 years, it's built my confidence up as a business owner. And I've learned so much, from these folks that join us each week. And Owwll was created because I realized that others should have that same opportunity, right? At the end of the day, all these other social platforms are all text-driven, video-driven, and often we just want to speak with the individual on the other side, right? And that was the whole point, social media being social, but there is no socialization actually happening, through a lot of these platforms. So with Owwll App, we will give experts that opportunity to go live at a moment's notice. You could be sitting down on a couch on a Sunday afternoon watching football. Tell your entire audience on social media that you're live. If they want to chat with you one-on-one, you could set your amount that you would charge for them to speak with you directly. And you don't actually have to be in or out. Your phone will ring like a cell phone call, and you pick up and you're getting paid for your time. So if you're an expert, let's say in the podcast world, and people are always asking you about how to run a podcast. Well, in a situation like that, you could now tell your audience, this is how, you could pick my brain as an expert. I'm live on Owwll, twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays from 10 a.m. to 12 a.m., or 12 p.m. in that situation, and pretty much get that opportunity to pick that person's brain, right? So there's not many apps out there that exist that do this right now. Everything else is booked into the future. And if we learn anything, from all these different technologies, is people just don't want to wait anymore, right? Amazon, you get your package the following day or the same day these days. Or when we look at, Uber, you want someone to pick you up, you go down your phone, and 5 minutes later, someone's grabbing you, right, to go somewhere. So we're going to create that same experience. So instead of Googling it, you're going to Owwll it, right? Google is great, but you get frustrated that you can't find the answer. Or you go on YouTube, you can't find it. You spend 5 hours, 8 hours trying to find the answer, where if you called an expert, you'd be able to figure out in 5 minutes likely.
Oh, I love it. It's an attention economy, right? If someone has that question, you want to answer that question literally in real time. So it sounds like across a wide swath of fields that you can connect with an expert. Now, they're going to what? The expert builds their own profile, and then they're going to share a link. Walk me through, let's say I decided I'm an expert in something. Some people, marketing maybe. We'll see. I want to be on the platform. I've built my profile. Walk me through.
Okay, so everyone starts as what we call an owlet, which is an advice seeker, right? So you get on the platform and you could only make calls, right? But in your situation, you want to also accept calls. So you must apply, right? So think about if Clubhouse and Cameo had a baby, it would be Owwll App, right? With Cameo, you could only see the profiles of celebrities and influencers. Those are the only people that you could have a Cameo completed by, and you have to, actually apply, to be on Cameo as an influencer. With our platform, you're applying as an expert. When you apply, we will see all your social media links. That's part of the process where you put in Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and then we're going to look at your profiles to confirm you are an actual expert. And then once you're approved, then you could go live and accept calls. So you would typically post on social media, when you would be available to speak to your audience, and then your audience would go on the app and book a time to speak with you. And it's first come, first serve. So if you're on a call, they'll see, just like a typical green dot means you're available on Facebook or LinkedIn versus a gray dot, which means you're unavailable. It works very similar to all the other apps that currently exist in that format. And they'll have to wait their turn to get on a phone call with you if you're currently on with somebody else. And while you're on the actual call with someone, you could only book a 10 or 20 minute call with a person. You could add more time, right? So if I'm speaking to you and I book 10 minutes, I'm having a great conversation about SEO. Well, I'll extend the call for another 10 minutes. And on your side as the expert, you could accept or deny that other 10 minutes because you might be running into another Zoom meeting, for example, and you'll tell that person nicely, hey, book a time in the future with me. I have to run another meeting, right? So we will have the ability to have instant availability of experts in different categories, right? So you could search all different categories, like you said, doctors, dentists, podcasters, celebrities, influencers, anyone under the sun technically could be an expert on our app, and create a profile. And of course, the market will speak, right? So if someone's charging $5,000 for 10 minutes and they don't have enough brand authority to pull that off, well, they're going to have to lower their costs, right? No one's going to book a time with them, right? And if somebody just wants to pass back wisdom and their net worth is $1 billion and just charge $1 for a phone call, they're more than welcome to if they just want to have some fun and talk to people and share wisdom with the world, right? So there's a lot of different approaches, and a lot of people will take business off the platform. They'll use it as a tool to just make sure people are taking their time serious for 10 minutes. And then if business needs to be done off the platform, they could go around on other apps and share their email and then do a Zoom, of course, outside of the app. And that, of course, would be a major networking tool for a lot of individuals that currently use LinkedIn, as an example.
Right. But that on-demand kind of mentality is what I'm so intrigued, that instant access to an expert. And it sounded like once approved, right? And correct me if I'm wrong here, once approved, the expert then can basically make their own price for their time. They can value it as they see fit. And then the market, I love the way you worded that, the market will dictate. If they're getting filled up, you might recommend they increase their time per 10 minutes, if you will. But if they're not, that would be like, hey, figure out where your sweet spot is. So the inspiration was when you saw during the pandemic, people trying to make a lot of money, lost their jobs. But talk to us about where it goes after that, because that's a good starting point, right? But do you feel like people could, maybe that's end 2022, 2023. Do you feel like it can be a primary?
It absolutely can. For certain professions, right? A lot of coaches out there, they rely on one-on-one phone calls, right? And with our platform, it's a great way for them to track all the reviews. Right now, they're doing 15-minute calls for free, and all those calls are not getting noticed that they're completing, right? They could be doing 100 calls a week. No one's leaving a Google review, after a free call. But with our app, it is showing all the calls that have been made with the reviews. So if someone does 1,000, calls in a year, it's nice to know that everyone really respects that person's opinion and it's being tracked, kind of like how Fiverr or Upwork work in that matter, right? Where if you're doing a video and, someone does an amazing job, you could go read the reviews that, this person has a 5-star review after doing, 500 explainer videos, for example, right? So our app, will really be controlled by that expert, making sure they're taking it serious because they don't want negative reviews. And additionally, we'll kick people off the platform, right? There's another side to that we have vetting going on. So if someone's score drops too low and the audience out there is not really, getting a lot of value from that expert, we're gonna remove them as an expert and put them back to an advice seeker because, the market spoke and was not really happy with that performance of the calls being made, or if they were just being rude, right? Or saying something inappropriate, which will of course happen. That's happening right now on Clubhouse, right, where people get to speak about whatever they want and Clubhouse lets it go on. And that's not acceptable on our platform. Our platform, you'll get a negative review and we'll kick you off, right? And it's designed specifically for that, to be very professional, more like a LinkedIn, style profile and accountability at the end of the day.
It sounds like curated advice on demand. And I think that before we jump into, again, where everyone's going to be able to get it and kind of some of that marketing stuff that really kind of resonates with us, that's kind of been our honey hole for years. Talk to me about the journey to make it real, right? Let's be honest. You can't just snap your fingers and make an app. There's definitely work and time that goes in while you're launching in the App Store January 2022, widespread in February of 2022. Would you be able to give us a little bit of like the development process, how any challenges that came up or things that you overcame that was like, wow, now I know so much more than I did before, and it's making Owwll better and better and better?
Oh, of course. I'm happy to share the journey. So the idea came to me around April/May of 2020 when COVID hit. I was doing my podcast over Zoom, and I started to really, notice how much people miss talking to each other, right? Everyone was really unhappy. Everyone was working from home, all the closures going on. And being a financial advisor, I started seeing, how many people were out of work, how many professions, were really struggling and may never come back, right? Like the cruise industry or motivational speakers, for example, who don't have that opportunity to travel to speak on stage, and that's their main revenue source. And it's not, a book author, it's not the podcast they run, it's most of the speaking gigs. So at that time, I said, why not, give everyone that's working from home an opportunity to have an on-demand service. Now, these have been tried before, but they failed because it's so expensive to build a mobile app, and it's really difficult to market an app with everyone, of course, not at home. Everyone's running around, and to change the way people think about going live on an app and putting some of their business through an app, is a hard change for a lot of folks. So when we went down this road, I just, I picked up the phone and I called someone that was on my podcast. They had a 200-person tech firm. I said, can you build something like this? I didn't even know if it could be built, right? There was not much audio technology out there that did this in the past. Clubhouse at that point really was non-existent. That was in beta itself that, only had so many users. I didn't know about it back then. And I just researched all the competition. It didn't seem like it was available. Everything else was websites. We're booking time with experts into the future, but we wanted to book a service that was instant. So they said, well, the process, was to build an MVP, right? Minimal viable product,
Right.
And that takes 3 weeks, 4 weeks. You get on a team with our developers and we start building what it would look like. And, I said, how much does that cost? And most of them said, well, most places will charge you anywhere from $2,000, $5,000, $10,000. This firm was quite reputable. They said, we do a lot of our MVPs for $10,000 to $50,000. So thankfully, with good connections, I got a reasonable price on that MVP, below $10,000. Keep it at that. And I just said, I'm going to try it. I'm going to do an MVP. I always interview people on my podcast that have created mobile apps that have been successful, and they always say that term MVP. And I just said, let's go for it. And through my podcast, I really was well aware how hard it was from other guests that have shared their experience and how costly it was. So then the MVP was complete, and I was blown away at how expensive it was, right? The MVP came out amazing, like 80-page document, logos. We built a website. Like I literally showed up one day and they're like, what's the name? I had no idea what the name is. We picked Owwll because it's the bird of intelligence and wisdom. And you had an extra W and extra L in there. And it was open on the .com. And I said, this will work. We don't have to have OWL. We'll just make it with 2 extra letters and it will work. It's nice and short and simple. And a logo like an owl looks cool. Like that's a great mascot that so many big brands use already. It's powerful. So that's how the brand was created. And we built out all these wireframe slides where we were able to see what it would look like, in the real environment. And they show you how many hours it would take to build all these different screens. And honestly, I was blown away. It was very expensive, hundreds of thousands of dollars. They quoted us. And I said, well, let me make sure this is real. Let me go quote it elsewhere. So I quoted it 7 different places the month of September 2020. And their pricing was aligned. All the different companies, there was only like a $30,000, $40,000 variance from one company to the next. The only way to get a steep discount was to really send it offshore to India, for example. And then the pricing came down dramatically, but you lost control of the project. And the project of this scale, I did not feel comfortable doing that. And then other people would say, find a co-founder. And I said, well, that's great. It sounds interesting to just go to tech events, networking, and try to find a co-founder that has, a CTO, someone with technology background that could build it with you. But I didn't have time. I looked at this as, a product we want to get to market quickly when everyone was at home, when there was no vaccine. At the time, it was a marketing play. The concept makes perfect sense. Everyone knows they would use it if they had availability to book, time with an expert, because we've all been there before, and nothing exists that has that. So I knew it would work. It's just a matter of can we get it into enough hands and to the market quick enough while everyone was bored at home. So I partnered with the same company that did the MVP. They ended up giving me a discount for a portion of equity. And I took them up on that offer because I wanted them to really be part, of the big launch coming up in January, February, because I knew they would build it right. They would be accountable if they were taking equity, and they would lose that equity if it wasn't built properly. So they came on board with us. And very important was I built the discount not only on the build, but also after the build to maintain the app. And I think that's where almost everyone gets app development wrong. They build an app thinking that the cost, let's just say an app costs $200,000, and then they're going to be done. And Thankfully, I had a partner with me that told it to me honestly. He's like, Jason, you're going to be in the teens at a minimum for, development after that, because you need to keep your development team around. You can't just take a 10-person, we have about 10 people on it. You can't just take 5 people off, and then when your app launches, bring them back, because those people are now on different projects. You need to keep them on and get feedback from the people that are testing your app and continuously, improve the app experience from the feedback that is received. And that is exactly what happened. We launched our MVP in June of this year, and we had a lot of bugs, and it was really difficult to get beta testers onto the platform. And we kept improving and improving. And thankfully, I took that discount to heart, because we would have ran out of money probably, right? If you take 10 developers, quick math, our developers $3,000 to $5,000 per person. These apps could cost you $30,000 to $50,000 run rate, right? If you're paying out of pocket. So if you don't have venture capital, that's a major cost, right? And that's all just developing. So thankfully, I did it right from the beginning, because I had somebody that was on my podcast that didn't want to ruin his reputation over trying to, build an app real quick, behind the scenes. And then I would have to ask those difficult questions down the road. So that's kind of the journey so far.
you talked about the idea of knowing that like you build the first thing in the testing, right? There was a lot of testing and everything like that. Was there anything that you guys had in the idea of your product that was like that you maybe completely missed on, or that you were like that in theory worked maybe in the MVP side, but not on like the how people are using it?
Yeah, when things are in a PDF format with pictures, it all looks perfect. But in a reality scenario, when you have notifications and auto emails going out after the calls to show how much money the expert made and how much the advice seeker spent, and screen to screen movement, you realize real quick, right when the MVP was completed, that it was so obvious that we missed certain things, right? Because you just can't think of how that some of that functionality will work just on paper. You have to really do a call with someone. Right after the call is done, you're like, this is how I should have done it, because the call is coming to an end. We have to remind the person what's going to happen at the end of the call, or can the caller see the person's profile when the incoming call is coming in? That wasn't there at first, right? So imagine an expert getting a call for some random, seeing, Craig Brooks is calling, and then you're on a call and you just see a timer, right? I'm like, I don't even know anything about Craig Brooks, but now you can see all Craig Brooks's profile. So as an expert, as the call begins, you actually can quickly review his hobbies, what categories he's interested in, what he's an expert in, and immediately kind of have a little bit of background while the call starts. And you could read some of his bio as well during the call. So there's a lot of things like the back button wasn't placed right because you're on an Android device versus an iPhone. So a lot of developers, offshore used to Android devices. In America, we're used to, iPhone devices more commonly in the professional setting. Sure. So we had to really focus more on the iPhone with back buttons, because Android just has a different type of built-in back button on the phone. So we also had to dumb it down, right? Like adding the follow button. Instead of trying to be so creative and, build an Owwll follow button, we're like, no, we have to have the word follow, next to each person's profile.
Yes.
Yeah,
so simple things.
Yeah,
simple things that we had to dumb down. And then a lot on the accounting side, like integrating with Stripe. So when it was done, we noticed 100 bugs or so, and we just kept going after those bugs and correcting, like the timers. They built a great app, but then the timers were skipping, right? That was an issue. Then all of a sudden going live took too long, right? It took like 6 seconds to go live, and users care about that. They want to go live instantly. They don't want to look at the phone and see it circling for 6 seconds. No different than a website, right? You go to a website, it spirals for 6 seconds, you're gone. You have no patience anymore to wait. So we had to make sure that some of these things that were first built by design then got updated. And that is an issue with apps, because you'll look at what you signed up for and they'll say, well, this was built by design. That's how it was in the MVP. Right. And they have to, recode it and build it a different way. And that's costly and takes a lot of time. So you just have to account for revisions. And I think a lot of people go down the lane with a minimum, some type of budget. They'll have $100,000 and, they'll spend $75,000, on their MVP. And then all of a sudden they realize real quick, they're going to need another $75,000 and they don't have the money. So the reason why I went down this lane is being in the financial service business, being a finance expert, I calculated that cost up front. I looked at it, and I said, if I am going to build the MVP in June, then I need a runway of X amount of money. So that way I could get it to the market and not be begging for capital. So a lot of people build the idea, and then what ends up happening, they stop because they go around trying to raise, venture from angel investors or crowdfunding, whatever way they're doing it. And pretty much they end up marketing and they get burnt out because no one will get money because there's no users. Everyone wants to see users on the platform. And with these marketplace style apps, it's obvious there's monetization built in, but the venture firms will just eat you alive because you have no traction, you have no users, so they don't want to get involved. It's not ready. Right. And you really need a decent amount of traction. And that's what we're seeing now in the audio space. A couple apps like Wisdom, Intro, Clubhouse have all gotten funded because they all had traction. They had users. And then people will be lined up, saying, hey, they want to get involved because they see the movement going on in the audio space. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to focus as much on raising capital. You could kind of do it all at once. So our goal is to bootstrap this thing all the way through the launch, and build a brand ambassador network, which keeps a lot of pressure off our costs. And then we launch, then we could entertain, raising capital based on the downloads that come in at that point.
Well, I mean, it sounds like you have passion for what this is about. Number one. Number two, I love the honesty in, some of those things that, you never thought that you would have needed, or that, the back button's in the wrong spot. That's an awesome thing. And it makes me really think, gosh, having the app, the Owwll app, right? Having that expert, right? What is that 10 minutes worth to just learning that in that process, right? When somebody jumps into a new thing, when somebody's trying something, right? Whether it is, financial advice or law or app development or SEO, whatever that topic might be, right? Your snippet there could be 10 minutes of something that, if somebody had an idea, could save them a lot of heartache from thinking that they spent that money.
100%. And that's what I've learned on my podcast, right? I get to interview guests all the time, and they share their failures. And today I heard one of the craziest failures I've ever heard on the show. He sold his brand for $1 billion. He was 29 years old in the 90s. And what ended up happening is he was locked up, with the company going public with the stock for 18 months. We all know what happened with the tech bubble. Everything crashed. I think he said his shares went from in the teens to 6 cents. So he started seeing, ready for this, guys, $130 million go to a few $100,000 at 29 years old. And all the people around him, all the employees who had stock options, all rode that wave with him, who built that brand. And if they literally, had a better lawyer that didn't do equity over 18 months with a lockup, they did it that month for a little less money, he would have been, Mark Cuban, right? Because Mark Cuban's company did, the same thing, but he got his money out early before it crashed, right? So there's so many stories like that during the tech bubble. And it's just hiring the right expert that told you what they did so you don't get it wrong. And if someone asked me about an app, right, if they had a limited budget, they could protect themselves properly, because I could share that journey of how expensive it really has been since we started. And really most of these apps are going to run $500,000 or higher. And eventually, once you launch, it never stops. You're gonna get well over $1 million with app development costs and marketing, right? Marketing costs a lot of money, and a lot of people don't focus enough on the marketing budget. And then you need staff, and then you need customer service. So it really is a really hard thing to tackle, mobile apps. And a lot of people just are not looking at the wrong way. They kind of kick the can down the road and say, I'll figure it out when I get there. But they just don't have the network to pull it off, and that's why 99% of apps fail, right? It's that high, 99%.
And it sounds like you've done a lot of infrastructures building, so you're going to be a part of the 1% that doesn't. So let's talk a little bit about the next steps, because we're verging at the end of 2021, coming into that Q1 of 22, where everything's kind of kicking off for Owwll. So is it that you guys, I know you mentioned the brand ambassador kind of network, and are you targeting certain social platforms? Are you looking for certain thought leaders or certain people in fields? Do you already have, because again, you've met so many people and you helped so many businesses build, do you already have like that lined up? Help us understand how you've already got some experts lined up, or who you're going after.
Well, the good news is experts are going to value time, right? So technically speaking, we could actually just build the whole platform with experts only, right? Because all experts will charge for their time, but then turn around and spend money on other experts, right? I'm an expert, I'm a business owner. There's no business owner that knows it all, right? They need to call people. You could be Gary Vaynerchuk, and someone on your team doesn't know the answer, but you could go down, and Gary V could go ahead and call Mark Cuban, and he'll value spending $50,000 for 10 minutes with Mark Cuban, technically, right? So at the end of the day, this app is for everybody. We're really just creating an easier way to get connected to people instantly. And what we're going to do is build a huge brand ambassador network. So pretty much we're giving a percentage of the revenue of every call that is completed to a brand ambassador to stick with us. And there's guidelines. What does a brand ambassador have to do? A certain amount of social media posts, a certain amount of time on the platform. So that way, when we launch, there's always going to be active people on the platform. So we're protecting ourselves, because they'll be there, versus going an angle where you just hope that when you launch, people show up. We can't do that. If we show up and hope everyone goes live, right? But then everyone, joins as an advice seeker and sees no one live, they're never going to go back into the app. So we really need to build it properly, where anytime Craig, you log in, you see 100 different types of professionals in there that when you do a filter search, and you could connect instantly, with that expert. And experts also need to, get enough phone calls being made to them, or they're going to go live and then eventually say to themselves, "Hey, this platform's really cool. I love it, but no one's calling me, so I'm gonna get off the app." Right. So we're gonna have a lot of incentives the first 3 months where people that refer other people will get real dollars into their account. For example, $10, will go to that person's account, that referred someone, and the referee will get $10 referee each. So that way they'll have free money to spend on the platform. And then once they make calls, they'll understand the concept quite quickly because there is friction. If someone enters an app and has to put their credit card in, maybe they won't do it. But if it's free dollars to do it, they will. And then if we have featured experts during our launch, then people, will of course follow them and download the app and then want to connect with them. If we have a reasonable rate for some big motivational speakers as an example, right? So we're doing a combo, brand ambassadors, featured experts that are paid the first 15 days, let's say, a live event. We're going to have a clubhouse event where all our brand ambassadors join leading up to it, of course. So it's going to be a combination of multiple marketing methods all at once during our launch party, of course.
I can't wait for that. I mean, I like Clubhouse. I like Twitter Spaces. I love what I'm seeing out of a lot of these platforms. And I think it might, add value to any listeners, especially if they're on, again, a small business side. Talk to me about who would be after launch and everything like that. Again, maybe they weren't someone you hit in their brand, in the brand ambassador push and in that early push, but what would you say to that smaller person who maybe they're a glass blower, maybe it's something that really has nothing to do with tech, but what would you say to them about why they would want to jump on Owwll?
Of course, because you have a lot of the trades, right? Think about a mechanic, think about a plumber, think about what Angie's List has done, within the trade. So we all run into the same problems, right? At our home and need professionals from the trades as well. So think about being able to call those professionals as well, right? It doesn't end with just the LinkedIn crowd. Technically, you could go after the trades as well. And the technology that we're using is actually similar to Zoom, where you could be on audio or you could be on video if you click a button. So think about the 2.0 version. Once we test the market for the first 6 months, we make a decision that it's working great and everyone loves it, imagine giving the power to the expert when they go live that they will accept video calls as well. And the video call might cost actually more money than the audio call. Sure. A video call, you have to actually be dressed properly, where an audio call, you could be in your pajamas in bed giving someone advice. So we can go after a larger market by activating video. And think about, you got your taillight out, and you're like trying to just talk to a mechanic and say, "Hey, how do I replace this on my car?" Or your car is broken down on the side of the road, and then you could zoom in with someone to give you advice, when that is occurring, or something related around your house when it comes to your plumbing situation, or you have a leak, it's something along those lines. So there's a lot of angles here. And that's why we're saying instead of Googling it, you could go ahead and Owwll it.
That's exactly where my head went, because I'm not the handiest person, right? So if I'm even changing something on the toilet, the plunger thingy, and you might go to YouTube, but there's no back and forth. There's no connecting with that person. You can leave a comment and hope that they're active on their profile. But I love the concept of, I see a green light that they're live right now. I'm on Owwll App. I can connect with that person. So where do you see this 2023, 2024? What is on the launches first? Got it. Where does it go from there?
I believe it will become a household name, right? When you look at what a Clubhouse has really pulled off recently and how addicted people are to the audio experience and chatting with people in group settings, and we look at the feedback when you ask anyone on Clubhouse, what do they not like about Clubhouse? It's everything that we offer on Owwll, right? They don't enjoy that, they can't sometimes get on stage. They're waiting in the crowd to speak, and it takes them an hour to talk to someone. Then they want to talk to someone one-on-one, but they can never get through. They're back channeling them or sending a message on Instagram or LinkedIn, and they're not getting those messages returned. We look at the experts. They're looking at it from a different lens. They're saying, I get too many messages. I don't know who I should accept calls with. There's just too much coming in through these inboxes. I can't just hire an assistant to just message them all back in a creative way. I can't just give my time away for free. So it works from both sides when we're looking at what's going on Clubhouse. And we believe that, we are not a competitor to Clubhouse, but we'll run parallel to Clubhouse as being another option for people to help monetize their time that they're already, providing different, scenarios on Clubhouse with rooms and knowledge and wisdom, right? So now at the end of a Clubhouse room, say, hey, anyone wants to book a time one-on-one with me, go ahead and head over to Owwll. I'll be live for the next 2 hours. And a lot of people in that room would 100% book a time with them, right? They just heard them speak. What happens with all of us is, we want to chat, we can't get through to them. So what happens is we put it on our to-do list and then we forget about it because we're like, we give up, right? At this point, it's just not worth it. Or we listen to a podcast. How many times have we listened to a podcast and at the end we're like, I would love to call that person.
Every time.
Every time.
It's like that's what we're in love with, this idea of on-demand advice, because that is where everything is going. You want it now. People want, the consumer, the user wants their problem solved immediately. And let's be honest, you brought this up, you touched on it, but I think it hits home for me, my wife, my mother, my sister reaching out to me because they're not good at Googling. They're not good at it. So they can't even get to the thing they would want to get to. So they get frustrated and then nothing ever happens. You have an app like this with on-demand advice. Once people are onboarded, that's what's so intriguing to me. I mean, this podcast won't even be launching till Q1 also. So it's very cool that, we can get caught up in as people are Googling Owwll, they'll get to listen to you explain all this, because on-demand advice intrigues me. And I don't know if that's even, again, just you called it that. I know that. I don't know if that's, again, what you're using to get it out there to people. But 10 minutes with an expert, it's just not available. There's really almost no other way to do that, at least one that I've come into. I'm in my late 30s and I haven't seen one yet. So we're really excited. Where are people going to be able to? Is this just Android and iPhone store? Or is there going to be a website where they can onboard that way? They got to use the phone. Talk to me.
Yeah, everything's going through the phone, right? Because all calls, it's an audio app experience. No one has your actual cell phone number, which is great, right? So people love that part as well. You're not sharing personal data and people are connecting you through an audio app. Your phone rings like a cell phone call. When incoming call is being made or an outgoing one, your phone's ringing like a cell phone call. So really the app stores, right? Our website will just point you right back to the app store. Of course, in the future, we could build a website where maybe they could look at different profiles and filters through there and connect it back to the app in some capacity. But currently everything's through the app.
Will it be simultaneous, Apple and Android?
Yeah, we built it on React Native's platform. And that was part of the app development decisions, right? A lot of times you'll build it just for iOS, and then you'll have to build it again on Android. That's what a lot of apps end up doing. With ours, we felt we could do it on React Native's platform so that we didn't have to do the code twice. And that's an interesting topic. Some apps do what I'm doing, explode, and then end up rewriting the code.
That makes sense. Jason, this is amazing. You walked us through the journey of where it came from, that early pandemic, like how are people going to get there, taking us through the development process, your honesty on even some of the bugs and some of the things. I really think that's going to be helpful for people to understand that there are obstacles to get over, but they can be overcome. And you've done that. OWWLL. That's OWWLL. Is there anything else we would need anyone to know?
By the time this releases, it should be in the App Store, and we're in a beta round. I'm really open on LinkedIn. I'm really open on Instagram. If anyone wants to pick my brain, go ahead and reach out through those platforms, and happy to take feedback of the app. Anything is available through those platforms, and happy to chat with anyone. This is a big undertaking, and I take all feedback serious.
Can't thank you enough for joining us and talking us through everything. And we're legitimately excited for Owwll to launch and to engage on the platform.
Awesome. Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
It's time for today's tech tip. Whenever we interview guests, we always ask them to share a tech tip.
Basically, this is anything that makes their lives easier. Could be their favorite app, a piece of software, a specific website. If it saves them time, frustration, or money, then we want you to know about it.
For this week, we actually have a handful of tips from 3 graduates of New Horizons South Florida's Women in Tech program.
My little tech tip is to always remember to power it on and power it off. That's my tech tip.
I like that.
I was going to add like a keyboard shortcut that I've been using that I never used before, and it saved time. It's Control Backspace. will delete entire words at the same time instead of just letters. So before I used to just do backspace, like until I'm done. But
I do not know why David did not teach me this, because I did not know that. I did not know that control backspace would take a whole word. As someone who has been forced to write for our business, David, where have you been, bro?
And that's for Windows. For Mac, I'm not there yet. I'm looking up. I'm trying to get there.
So for me, always check your cables. So if you see that something doesn't look like it's powered on, or if you're having internet connectivity issues, always check your cables and make sure that they're always plugged in. Because I've gone out to many houses and it's the same issue. I literally just plug in the cable.
So I'll give one more quick tip.
Please.
Always get the updates on your phone, on your computer.
That's big.
Whatever your tablet, whatever device you're using. If there's an update, please get it. It's really going to protect you. There's a lot of threats out there, and the updates work.
All ladies, thank you so much. The ladies of New Horizons South Florida's Women in Tech program with some awesome tips for us. 3 graduates and the program's executive director joined us on our second episode. We got a link in the show notes in case you missed it.
For details and show notes about today's show, go to floridapodcastnetwork.com. And we want our community of Florida enthusiasts to grow. Join in with our superfans, the FPN Insiders, on Facebook, Clubhouse, and Good Pods. Just search for FPN Insiders. And of course, find us anytime at iwantclarity.com.
Big thanks to this week's sponsor, Flintstone Media. Be sure to visit all the amazing shows on the Florida Podcast Network. You can find them at floridapodcastnetwork.com. Come back to hear what else we discover in Florida Tech on TECHxploration. Because if we can't get close to you, we'll settle for the ghost of you. We love technology.
Floridians are both creating and consuming some amazing innovations from shore to shore. So join in on this ride with Craig and David exploring the innovative tech in our backyards. Find the latest episodes, show notes, and news at floridapodcastnetwork.com. Flintstone Media has been the digital messaging bedrock of several brands and businesses, serving as a highly resourceful podcast production house and consultancy firm for over 6 years. Visit flintstonemedia.com for podcast samples. From show development and setup through recording and distribution, work with a leader in the industry and add a new podcast to your brand's content offerings. That's flintstonemedia.com.